My name is Jason Feifer. I'm the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. I'm delighted to be with you to talk to you briefly about the things that I find so powerful about entrepreneurs, which isn't just what they build, and it isn't just the solutions that they bring to the world, but it is the mindset that they have adopted in order to navigate through the insane challenges, the bursting your head through the walls that are required for entrepreneurship that I think everybody can learn from. And had we been on this computer instead of here, I would have had these fun graphics to show you, but I don't. So just imagine fun graphics. Here's the thing. I think that throughout, and this is what entrepreneurs, I think, inherently understand, but I think it's important to draw it out for everybody. I think that when we go through any moment of great change, we go through 4 distinct phases. And I want to tell you them briefly. Number 1 is panic. Absolute panic. We have no idea what's happening as we go through a change. And by the way, I'm talking about a career change, a change in your business, a change in your industry, the global pandemic change in any kind, I think large or small. The first thing we feel is panic. And then we go to adaptability, where we start to get a sense of what it is that we still have available to us and what we can start to work with. Then new normal, we start to define new routines. We start to figure out what we have that we can build upon. And then most importantly, and this is the thing that I think we all need to focus on, and that I think entrepreneurs inherently understand in some way, even if they don't identify with it exactly, it is the phase wouldn't go back. And by wouldn't go back, I don't mean to discount the tragedy and loss that comes with many kinds of change, but what I am here to tell you is that moments of change can bring us to this place where we, whether we were forced into it or not, where we ultimately come to say, I have found something that is so new and beneficial to my life that I wouldn't go back to a time before I had it. And this insight, this shift, I think is the true definition of entrepreneurship and adaptability, and the thing that we all need to be doing in our lives and in our businesses constantly, because we have to go to wouldn't go back. Change is not optional. The future is not something that you can opt out of. We are going to go through constant moments of change. And the question is, can we get to that place where we see it not as a burden, but as an opportunity? And I think that what is so powerful about entrepreneurs is that they are able to recognize that even though they can't see what that phase is, they don't know what wouldn't go back will be for them, that they know that it's there. And that they're able to move forward in a brave and powerful way to get to that phase, to get to that insight. And you know what's so interesting is that a moment like we're in right now, a moment of transition, a moment of disruption, and we've been through it for 1.5 years, but it continues to feel like there are endless phases of this disruption. This actually is an amazing moment to find wouldn't go back. I was wondering at the very beginning of the pandemic, March 2020, I got to wondering what good could possibly come from something this disruptive. And I thought, well, why don't I call somebody who has insights into the worst possible version of this that anybody has ever experienced on Earth in history. And that, I would say, was the bubonic plague of the 1300s. I wonder, did anything good come out of the bubonic plague? Because if so, then there is hope for us. And so I called this guy named Andrew Rabin at the University of Louisville. He's a medieval scholar. And I said, what good, if anything, came out of the bubonic plague? And he told me this really interesting story. And the story goes like this. So quick history lesson. You might remember this from grade school. The medieval economy is a lord and serf system, which is to say that the lords own the land and they also own the serfs, and the serfs work the land. It is slavery. And the bubonic plague comes along in the 1300s, and it kills upwards of 60% of Europe. 60% of Europe just wiped out. And then at the end of this, the lords, of course, want to get back to work, and they go to the serfs and they say, okay, surviving serfs, time to work the land again. Let's start working. And an interesting thing happens. And that is that there are no longer enough serfs for all the lords. A lot of the serfs are dead. And therefore, multiple lords are going to each serf saying, come work for me, come work for me. And what the serfs discover is that they can change the calculus. they can now start to demand compensation for their work, something that they were not receiving before. And this, Andrew Rabin tells me, is the beginning, the very beginning, but the very beginning of the employment contract as we know it, the idea that labor has a value and that people should be compensated for that work. It's the thing that brings us all together right now. That is a hell of a wouldn't go back moment, isn't it? Terrible things happened during the bubonic plague, but we got to a place where we certainly would say, I wouldn't want to go back to that. And people experience that in large and small ways. That was gigantic. I'm going to tell you a tiny, tiny example that I have found really powerful during this time. And that was a woman in Baltimore whose name is Lena, who has a store called Lena's Wigs. And Lena's Wigs used to operate like a regular storefront, which is to say that they would, the door was open, anybody could walk in, there would be somebody to greet them, and they could go around and look at the wigs. And when the pandemic came, she could not operate the storefront the way that she did before, and she started to wonder if she had to move to appointment-only shopping. Now, this really terrified her, and the reason it did so was because I'm sorry, I'm so lost because I'm trying to deal with it. The IT. The reason it did so is because she thought that nobody would want to shop that way. Too much friction, right? And so she had to do it. She was forced into it. And what she discovered in moving from closing the door, not allowing people to come in, no longer operating like a storefront, and instead just making people book appointments, she found that actually she made more money and her customers were happy. Why? Well, because her customers never actually walked through the door. Curious people who didn't buy wigs walked through the door. Her customers were people who were largely shopping for wigs because of medical or religious purposes, and they were private, and they didn't want to be around random people who came off the street. They much preferred an appointment. And what Lena found ultimately was an amazing wouldn't go back moment, which is to say that this change forced her to reconsider the impossible. That's what change does. It forces us to reconsider the impossible, ideas that we never took seriously, that we thought were terrible ideas, dangerous ideas, ideas not worth engaging with. Those turned out to be valuable. And I know, I don't know if I have a little more time because I started 6 minutes late. So maybe Corbin, you can text me and let me know, but I will share with you because I've been asked to share a couple really powerful insights that I had picked up from some of the smartest people that I've talked to through my work at Entrepreneur. And what I find over and over again, the pattern that I have is that whatever people express, the most powerful ideas from the most powerful people are all in some way about this. They're all about this idea of adaptability and reconsidering the impossible and discovering a wouldn't go back moment. I'll give you an example. Malcolm Gladwell, best-selling author and okay, great. Thanks. So I'll wrap in just a few minutes. So because I know we're all tight on time. Best-selling author Malcolm Gladwell had told me that he doesn't ever think about what a Malcolm Gladwell project is. I had asked him because I was curious as a writer myself. I talked to Malcolm Gladwell, podcast host, best-selling book author. I'm sure you know his work, Crazy Hair. I wondered, Malcolm, do you have a filter? Do you have an idea of what a Malcolm Gladwell project is? And he said no, he tries never to do that. To never have an idea of what he should be doing and he shouldn't be doing because, and this was the words he used, he said, because self-conceptions are powerfully limiting. Self-conceptions are powerfully limiting, which is to say that if you have a specific idea of what it is that you do and the way that you do it, then you will shut off all of these other avenues for discovery, all these new opportunities that you could have, you will not, because you have a specific idea of how you do what you do. And I found another person who expressed something similar, Reid Hoffman, who is the co-founder of LinkedIn and is now an investor. He speaks of how people need to live in permanent beta. I love that phrase so much. We all know a product in beta. Perhaps you all right now are working on products that are in beta. And Reid says, you know, if we are to be successful entrepreneurs, successful human beings, that we need to think of ourselves as a product in beta, which is to say that there should be no expectation that we are finished and that we should always be evolving. And when something doesn't work, that's fine because it's in beta. It's not supposed to work perfectly. And instead, we need to think of ourselves as permanently in that state. And so we are constantly updating ourselves. We are constantly revising. And then the third person I'll share, which has a bit of a different tone to it, but I just recently talked to Maria Sharapova, the tennis star, this former tennis star, in fact, because she just recently retired and now she's an investor and strategic advisor with startups. And she told me this really powerful thing, which was that she learned in tennis that when she was building a team, she wanted to hire the people that she could lose with. That's how she would think. Which is to say that, is this person going to be so supportive that I can lose with them? Now, why would you want to think that way when you're a competitor? The answer is because you have to understand that you can't win all the time, that there is not a perfect path to success. There will be ups and downs, and that's the nature of it. And so if you plan for the worst and you surround yourself with people who are going to be there and help you through the worst, well, then you're going to be able to celebrate the good times too. And I have so many more examples like that because everybody says something like that. Ryan Reynolds told me that in order to be good at something, you have to be willing to be bad. I love this kind of mentality. As I said in the beginning, the reason why I find entrepreneurs to be so powerful is because they have internalized it. I don't think that it comes naturally. I think that you learn it along the way and it filters out. Right? In other words, there are the people who cannot internalize this, cannot find their wouldn't go back moments. These are the people who ultimately cannot succeed and survive along this path. But everybody else, the people who make it far enough along, they have realized that change can be an opportunity, that this is a moment where we can reconsider the impossible on a constant basis. We are always looking for those moments in which we can say, I knew how to do something and it worked then, but it won't always work. And so let's find the better way. Let's reconsider the impossible. Let's get to wouldn't go back. And I encourage you all to be thinking that way constantly. Be alert to it, to wouldn't go back. And so thank you for your time. I am so sorry that I was late and that this has happened on a shaky iPhone that I'm holding in my hand in my bedroom. Not the way that I wanted to do it. But you know what? As I talked just a minute ago, I mean, isn't that what this all is, right? We're just adaptable. We just do it. And so thank you again for your time. If anybody is interested in my work, if you go to jasonfeifer.com, JASONFEIFER.com, and click on free training, you'll get this free audio course that I have put together on how to become more adaptable. And then you'll also be notified when a book that I have that's coming out next year is coming out, which is called Build for Tomorrow, which is going to dive into a lot more of this in detail. Anyway, thank you again. I'm really honored to be here with you, and I'm sorry again that it's like full of IT problems. But I guess that's how it goes. And maybe one day we can all be together in a room. Okay, thanks so much.